awakening ตัว Pious Yogis. This evening we shall discuss how a yogi overcome the wrong view of self, Sasattaditi and Uccettaditi during the practice of mindfulness. First, I shall quote from a short discourse. Once there was a young Devata recited this verse in the presence of the Buddha, as if smitten by a sword, as if his head were on fire. A bhikkhu should wander mindfully to abandon sensual lust, kama raga. Then the Buddha replies, as if smitten by a sword, as if his head were on fire, a bhikkhu should wander mindfully to abandon identity view. So, which saying that you should follow? Should you follow the Devata so that you, in order to abandon sensual lust, or do you follow the teachings of the Buddha to abandon identity view, Sakaya Ditti?
The Buddha said.
The Buddha. So the Devata, though think that his attainment in those abandoning sensual lust is higher or more superior than abandoning the identity view, Sakkaditi. But the Buddha knows well that what the Devata has said, the abandoning of sensual lust, actually is by way of suppression, so Vikampana Pahana. So when Samatha meditators are able to attain absorption concentration, Jhana Samadhi, then Kama Raga will be suppressed. So if the absorption concentration is sustained till the last moment of life, then one will be reborn in the Brahma world, above the sensual world. Although the lifespan of beings in the Brahma world is very long, but it's not permanent. When the lifespan has expired, then they may born in the sensual world again, as well as be born in the what called the four apaya world. But the Buddha said that one should abandon identity view. This is a very urgent task, or should be taken by every followers. So when one has uprooted identity view, Sakkaditi, by the first path knowledge, then the door to the four apaya world is closed permanently. So here the Buddha emphasized the abandonment of identity view by path knowledge. So this way of abandonment is known as Samucceda Pahana. So only by attaining the path knowledge, then the path knowledge will uproot anusaya kilesa, or underlying tendency. But concentration, no matter how deep is the concentration does not have the power to uproot anusaya kilesa. Unless samatha meditators know how to switch their practice of samatha meditation into the practice vipassana meditation, then they shall be able to uproot anusaya kilesa. So that's why one should practice vipassana meditation by the practice of the four foundations of mindfulness. When mindfulness have not yet attained samucceda pahana, then they may able to abandon the defilements by the way of Tatanga Pahana. For example, when mindfulness meditators have attained purification of mind, in other words, have gained momentary concentration, Kanika Samadhi, then they shall begin to realize that there's a pair of processes. For example, there's object such as rising movements and a pair of awareness or the process of noting mind. So beside this pair of processes, there's nothing else behind these two processes. So that experience of Vipassana meditation will overcome the view of self. So this experience known as purification of view. So if meditators could sustain the effort and could increase the mental effort gradually, then they may realize that both processes are not permanent. They are subject to instant arising and passing away. So at times, there's no self or yogi observing these two processes. So there's a rising of consciousness cognizing the phenomenon, for example, the movements of rising that had appear and disappear instantly. If the practice is not matured, then some meditators might think that he or she is observing these two processes arising and passing away. But when meditators could keep on practicing, then the experience becomes clearer and clearer. In other words, there is no self or a yogi observing or be mindful of this pair of processes. So in that way, they will realizations of anicca. So in other words, when the consciousness of cognizing or knowing the phenomenon, when that consciousness is free from the view of self, then eventually there will be realizations that this pair of processes is arising and passing very instantly. So when there's a clear realizations of impermanent, then eventually there will be realizations of what called dukkha. So it's not possible to cling to the pair of processes which are impermanent, which is impermanent in nature. Then it's not possible for attachment to arise. So when the practice is not matured, sometimes there will some degree of attachment to the practice as well as the experiences. So during the practice of Vipassana meditation, meditators have to realize Tatanga Pahana. It's because realization of Tatanga Pahana will pave the way to the realization of Samujjeta Pahana. So if meditators are not able to realize Tatanga Pahana, in other words, they could not see that they are only Nama Rupa which are arising and passing away constantly, then they could not make progress. So when meditators could realize clearly that there's only a pair of processes which is arising in the state of interdependence, then they also could overcome Sasataditi, the view of eternity, and the Ucitaditi, the view of annihilationism. So when one has a wrong view, in terms of view of self, Sakaditi, Ataditi, then one might think, is this self is everlasting, or is this self only last temporarily? So The view of eternity, Sasatatitis, holds that there's a everlasting self or soul which you transmigrates from one existence to next existence, or from one life to next life. So those who do not understand the teachings or the Dharma well, they also have the idea or the notion that the consciousness will take birth again. But Ujjhaditi holds that the self only lasts temporarily. Those who hold Ujjhaditi might think that this life, there's only one existence. A person only lasts for one life. There is no more life when a person has passed away. Some may even think that there is no life before this existence. So, as long as they do not understand well conditionality, paccaya, then they may hold on to this wrong view firmly. Those who follow the teaching of Buddha, they most likely they do not have the view of Ujjhaditi. But when they do not understand well about conditionality, they may have the view that the consciousness is taking birth again and again, which is quite similar to Sasataditi. So it's important to overcome DT during the practice of Vipassana meditation. So if meditators think that there's an experiencer of this insight meditation, then they may not be able to make progress. Or they think that I'm watching my awareness going from this object to another object, another to another object. But when they begin to make some progress, they might be able to see that their mindfulness moving to another stronger object by itself. So meditators should not be contented with this experience. They should increase the effort gradually so that they can gain the experience of Vipassana meditation. So those who hold to the view of eternity, Sasataditi, then they might think that there's this same identity that lasts permanently, that's not subject to passing away. So during the practice of mindfulness meditation, it is important to follow the guideline of mindfulness meditation in order to realize the true knowledge. At the beginning of the meditation, and when the mindfulness and concentration are not strong enough, then meditators have to put effort or virya to direct the mind or the awareness to the phenomenon. Phenomenon here refers to what called ultimate realities. Every phenomenon is a nature process and has its own intrinsic nature, sabhava. But at the beginning of practice, the mind or the awareness is still clinging to the form. Or in other words, the awareness still conscious of the form very much, paying attention to the form or the shape. So meditators have to guide the mindfulness or lead the mind to perceive the phenomenon. So there are many phenomena such as movements, heat or hot, cold, pain, thinking, and so on. For example, during the walking meditations, as long as the mindfulness and concentration are not strong enough, meditators may feel that the leg is very heavy or the leg is very light, and they sometimes can feel the pressing of the other legs while moving. So meditators have to be patient and directing the awareness to perceive the movements when there's a process movements. So meditators might be still conscious of the pressing of the other foot or the heaviness of the leg, but they have to need the mindfulness to perceive the movements. So leg is merely a concept. So at the beginning of practice, attention of the mind likes to go to the form or the shape, or for example, the foot, the bending of the knee, the shifting of the body, and so on. Meditators did not put effort to direct the awareness to the movements or guide the mind to perceive the movements. Then the movements become unmindful phenomenon. So when meditators could increase the mental effort gradually, and mindfulness is getting more and more constant and continuous, and when the mind is free from hindrances and defilements, then concentration shall become stronger and stronger. So eventually, the attention of mind on various phenomena also getting stronger and clearer. So when meditators could make good progress, the mindfulness is no longer interested in the concept or in the form or the shape. At the time, the mindfulness will perceive the phenomena, or phenomena means the ultimate reality, such as movements, heat, cold, pain, movements as movements, heat as heat, pain as pain. At that time, meditators will not put effort to control the practice. The meditators will not put intentional effort to control their practice. Sometimes meditators put effort to control their practice so that the mindfulness is able to note precisely at the beginning of the arising of any phenomenon. So when the practice is going well, meditators can realize that they do not have to make an effort to arouse the arising of the mindfulness or the consciousness. So meditators will realize that the consciousness of knowing is arising very instantly with the arising of a phenomenon. So that consciousness is only perceiving the phenomenon, or not perceiving the shape or the form. So when the phenomenon has disappeared instantly, that consciousness also will subject to instant passing away. With the passing away of both processes, then there will be arising of another phenomenon. Then a process of consciousness of knowing will be arising almost very instantly with the arising of the next phenomenon. So that consciousness that know the phenomenon, or that consciousness is not being perceived by the yogi or by a self. The consciousness of knowing also can become an object for another process of consciousness. So in other words, there's a series of what called cause and effect that are taking place during that moment, that time. If there's a process rising movements, then there'll be a rising of process of awareness, or in other words, the consciousness of knowing the movements. So, in other words, the movements condition the rising of the consciousness of knowing, or sometimes we say the awareness. So this consciousness of knowing is being conditioned by the object. So the movements is a cause, the rising of this consciousness of knowing is an effect. So when the movements and the consciousness of knowing had passed away, then do you think everything will stop subsequently? So is because of the passing away of the previous phenomenon, then the next phenomenon can arise. So when next phenomenon has arisen, then there's another process of consciousness. So if the practice is well sustained and effort is strong enough, then meditators can realize that the consciousness which is being conditioned or is arising is being conditioned by the rising movements. So that consciousness knowing can become a cause. What does it cause? So that conscious knowing causes another process of consciousness. It's because the consciousness of the mind cannot cognize itself. At each moment, there's only one consciousness or one mind arising. So that conscious knowing condition the next process of consciousness, knowing the present one. So if the concentration is very deep and meditators have reached the advanced stage of the practice, sometimes it's possible to realize that there's a consciousness, a serious consciousness arising. So in other words, the consciousness of knowing, merely knowing the previous consciousness, that consciousness that realizes the passing away of an object. So this consciousness can become a condition the rising of the next consciousness, knowing this one or the present one. So when the meditation is going well, there's only a series of cause and effect. This experience you need to clear understanding of conditionality, or in other words, the profound teachings of Paticcasamuppada. So as you know, when meditators realize there's a series arising due to conditions, then they come to understand what calls the order arising, anuloma, in the teaching of dependent origination. Dependent on ignorance arises karmic formation, avijja paccaya sankara, sankara paccaya vijnanam, and so on. So until the jati paccaya jara maranam, or soka parideva, dukkha domana supayasa, or sambhavanti. So until the final one, or the jati paccaya jara maranam. So in those meditators could realize from their personal experience, there's a series of unbroken continuity in the connection of cause and effect, or cause with its fruits. So if meditators could realize from the personal experience that there's only a series of cause-effect taking place during the practice mindfulness, so do you think that they will hold on to this view of annihilation, ucetaditi? So at the time that experience will come, or called ucetaditi. So it's important to realize the arising of a mental and physical phenomena in a state of what called interdependence. The consciousness of knowing or cognizing can't arise without phenomenon. Rupa also can't arise without the mind or the consciousness. So in other words, if the practice is going well, then there's a realization that every process movement is caused by the mind, in other words, the intention. And the cause of action, or the origin of every action, is also the mind. So it's because of a mental state such wanting to do it. That's why an action will take place. An action or activity consists of various processes, and each process is preceded by the intending mind. So meditators who could realize through their personal experience about the cause and effect, then they realize that their intentional actions or volitional actions will produce effect or results. So if the action is evil or unwholesome, then it will produce painful results to others. Then eventually one shall reap the painful results. So when the practice of Vipassana meditation is in accordance with the guideline, with the discourse of the four foundations of mindfulness, then there will be realization of the clear experience of insight knowledge. So at that time, there will be realization or arising of consciousness at the sixth sense door clearly. Realization of the consciousness which is arising at the sixth sense door. So usually we give the examples of the sound. So with the arising of the sound at the ear door, so there's a consciousness arising, sensing the sound or perceiving the sound. So the arising of the consciousness of hearing is being conditioned by the sound, or by the arising of the sound at the ear door. So what does that consciousness of hearing will condition? So sometimes you might say that I'm mindful of the hearing, but in ultimately, is there a yogi or person becoming aware of the hearing? Actually, there's no a self or yogi mindful of that sound or mindful of that consciousness hearing. So if the practice has progressed to an advanced stage, then there's a consciousness arising, knowing or cognizing the consciousness of hearing. So the sound is a cause, arising of the conscious hearing is the effect or the result. So consciousness first was the effect, then become a cause for the arising of the consciousness of knowing. So the arising of the next conscious knowing is the effect. So meditators can see there's a series of cause effect. Effect become cause, then another effect. The next effect can become a cause, then another effect. So assuming that this series of cause effect have passed away, then a distinct smell appear at the nose door. So what that smell, what will it cause to arise? So it will cause another consciousness to arise. This consciousness sometimes known as smelling consciousness or nose consciousness. Then this smelling consciousness can become a cause, and in those conditions, another thing to arise. So is this smelling consciousness is the same consciousness as the consciousness that perceived the sound in the previous moment. So it's another new consciousness. So the consciousness that arising, cognizing the consciousness of smelling, this consciousness is the same as the consciousness that cognize the hearing consciousness. It's also two different processes of consciousness. In other words, the consciousness which is arising subsequently is a new consciousness. But it is difficult to see clearly unless meditators have developed very deep concentration and has gained very substantial experiences of Vipassana. So meditators could realize from their personal experience that whatever whatever arising at that moment is a new phenomenon. Then what will they overcome? So if meditators could realize whatever phenomenon that's arising at that moment is a new phenomenon, that experience overcomes sasatatiti at that moment. So, but if one could not see correctly, they see it wrongly, then they still fall into this view of a Ucheda Diti, Sasata Diti. For example, just I mentioned the first experience, when there's realizations of a unbroken continuity in terms of cause and effect, then there's a overcoming of a Uchetaditi. But one who see it wrongly will still cling to the view of eternity. It is because one think that all these phenomena are the same phenomena that are rising and passing away again and again. So similarly, when one could overcome the view of Sasatati, when there's a realization that every phenomenon that's arising at that present moment is a new phenomenon, then the experience overcome or Sasatati. So in other words, every phenomenon arising is a new phenomenon. Although meditators realize there's a continuity of a cause and effect. But every phenomenon which is arising at that moment, as well as a consciousness, are the new phenomena. But those who not see correctly, you still cling to the view of annihilation, Uchetaditi. In other words, they see this series of cause and effect as something like what called a broken continuity. So there's a stream of what calls cause and effect. We can say there's a stream of cause and effect. So when we view from the teaching of Paticca Samuppada, ignorance, what called avijja paccaya sankhara, dependent on ignorance, arises karmic formation. Till the last link, dependent on birth, arises decay and death and so on. So there's a series of cause and effect. This is called one stream or one continuity. So as long as one is not enlightened, then at the end of one's life, what will happen? With the passing away of last consciousness, then do you think that there's no more consciousness to arise? As long as one is not enlightened, with the passing away of the last consciousness, the passing away of the last consciousness become a condition for the arising of the next consciousness. Then we say that there's a being born in the next life or next existence. So whenever a thing arises, it's not only due to a condition, sometimes due to 2-3 conditions and so on. So what are the other conditions? So definitely there's a craving for becoming. Besides craving for becoming, then there's another condition. The other condition is the karma. That's ripening in the last moment. So the karma determines a person where he's going to be born again. So actually all this due to ignorance, avijja. But those who hold firmly to the wrong view, Uchetaditi, might think that at the end of this life, everything will be destructed. There's no more birth into the next existence. So it's because they could not realize what called continuity. So they only see that only this a single continuity. So these teachings of dependent origination is also related to the teaching of karma and its results. Sometimes some people might have this doubt or question: are the doer of the deeds and the experiencer of the results, are they the same person or the different person? Are they the same person? Are they the totally different person?
Person?
You say the same person, in other words, the doer and the experiencer, the doer, the karma, and the experiencer of the result are the same person, then you are in fact holding the wrong view of Sassata Ditti. Because Sassata Ditti say that there's an everlasting self which will transmigrate from one life to next life, or from this existence to next existence. But do you think that there are two different persons? The doer, the deeds is one person, the experiencer is another person. You say that there are two different persons, doer deeds is one person, experiencer the result is another person, then you fall into another wrong view, the view of Uceta Ditti. So there are various discourses discussing about these important and profound teachings. So in that way, you can say that if you hold on to this view of Uceta Ditti, then you can say that all my painful feelings are caused by other people. The painful feeling is not done by me, it's all done by others and make me feel painful. So the commentary use a simile, such like a tree has produced fruits. A tree has produced fruits. So, for example, when one has sow a mango seeds, so these mango seeds will be sprouting, growing, and eventually produce fruits. So similarly, because of this condition, so that's why we say that the three fruits, the three fruits mean the tree produces fruits. So when we say there's an experiencer, it's merely a conventional language. So you cannot say that the fruits is neither from other seeds or from other process of formation. So when one takes birth again, reborn again, that's why the scriptures and commentary say that neither the same nor another person, or neither the same nor difference. So such a stream of continuity, a stream of continuity, there's only cause and effect. Effect become cause and produce an effect. The effect become cause, then there's an effect. But the commentary say that in this stream of continuity, there's no absolute identity or absolute otherness. So the commentary explains via simile. So if there's an absolute identity, then there's no forming of curd from milk. Similarly, if there were absolute otherness, then the curd would not be derived from milk. If there's an absolute identity, the milk will never change or remains the same. You say there's an absolute otherness, then the curd and the milk are two different things. There's no relationship between them at all. So we use a conventional language. For example, there's an experiencer of the result of this action, it doesn't mean that there's a permanent self. If they say we cannot use conventional language, then it's not possible to explain about the teaching of karma. So similarly, one who has understood the teachings of the dependent origination and understanding through personal experience by the practice of Vipassana meditation, then they will rightly understand that there's no transmigration of self or soul. So the teaching of the Buddha about rebirth is totally different from what other teachings. Other teaching is about transmigrations and reincarnations. So if you think there's a reincarnation or a self or soul, then this is not in accordance with the teaching of Buddha. You think that there's a transmigration of self or soul to the next life or next existence, this is not really in accordance with the teaching of Buddha. So in order to understand well about rebirth, you have to understand well the teaching of conditionality. But to understand well the teaching of conditionality, you need to develop insight knowledge of cause and effect by the practice of Satipatthana meditation. We are practicing Satipatthana meditation, Vipassana meditation, and gain a deep what called insight knowledge. Then it's difficult to overcome the idea of what called eternity. In other words, one will think that the same thing is arise again. The same phenomena are arising again. So even you understand by reading or hearing, but you need to develop sharp mindfulness, deep concentration in order to realize it through your personal experience. So I wish all mindfulness meditators shall practice mindfulness in accordance with the teachings of the Buddha, so that you could overcome the wrong view, DT, and realizing all these conditioned phenomena clearly, and eventually you could uproot anusaya kilesa and attain ultimate purity of mind.
สาธุ สาธุ สาธุ